In this session, we will discuss about addressing, blocking and non-blocking primitives, buffered and unbuffered primitives, and the client-server model. Starting with the first topic, that is addressing in the client-server model. The first method is machine process addressing. In order for a client to send a message to a server, it must know the server's address. We assume that there is a file server which has been assigned a numerical address 243 and a client which has been assigned an address 199. Now we are referring to a scheme which uses two names, which specifies the machine and the process number. For example, 243.0 designates process 0 on machine 243. The machine number is used by the kernel to get the message correctly delivered to the proper machine, and the process number is used by the kernel on that machine to determine which process the message is intended for. So every machine can number its process starting from 0. Now in this case, no global coordination is needed because there is never any ambiguity between process 0 on machine 243 and process 0 on machine 199. So whenever there is some information to be passed or to be sent to the server by the client will first make a request to machine number 243 asking it to have an access to process 0, to which the server will reply with the client number and the process number. So here in this case, the request is to machine 243 process 0 and the reply is sent to the requesting machine, that is machine number 199 to process 0. So in this case, an obvious disadvantage is the kernel, the server addresses no. So now the system is not transparent, since the user is obviously aware of where the server is located. And transparency is one of the main goals in building a distributed system. We move towards the next method, that is process addressing with broadcasting. Yet another method for assigning process identifier is to let each process pick its own identifier from a large sparse address space, such as the space of 64-bit binary integers. Now the probability of two processes picking up the same number is tiny and the system scales well. However, here too there is a problem. The problem is, how will a sending kernel know what machine to send the messages? So on a LAN that supports broadcasting, the sender can broadcast a special locate packet containing the address of destination process. So in this case, there will be a broadcast by the client, which will have the address of the destination process. So the first step is broadcasting. Now because it is a broadcast packet, it will be received by all the machines on the network. All the kernels will check to see if the address is theirs, and if so, send back a message, here I am, by giving their network address or the machine number. So now in this case, this server responds, here I am. followed by the normal procedure of request and reply. So once the client knows the address of the server, the request will be sent by the client to the server for some work to be done. The server will process that particular job and send a reply back to the client. Now in this case, the sending kernel that uses this address will cache it. So next time it does not have to broadcast its packet. So whenever next time the same server is required, it will make use of the address from the cache. The disadvantage of this system is that although the scheme is transparent, even with caching, the broadcasting puts an excessive load on the entire system. The next method is address lookup using a name server. Now here we have an extra machine which is used to map high-level service name to machine addresses. Now when the system is employed, processes such as servers are referred by some ASCII strings, and it is these strings that are embedded in program and not the binary machine or the process number. Now every time a client runs on the first attempt to use our server, so now let's say this particular client wants to have an access to this server. So the client sends a query message to a special mapping server. In this case, it is a name server, which is asking for the machine number where the server is currently located. Once this address has been obtained, the request can be sent directly. So now, whatever the client had requested for a particular server address has been processed, and that response has been sent to the client. Okay. Now it is a normal procedure of request and reply. So now since the client already knows the address of the server, it will place a request to the server. The server will process the request and send a reply back to the client. Now, the disadvantage of this method is it makes use of a centralized component, and we very well know that the distributed system need to avoid the use of centralized component so as to avoid the bottlenecks. Next, we'll discuss about blocking and non-blocking primitives. So basically we are talking about message passing here. Discussing the blocking send primitive. Now when a process calls send, it specifies a destination and a buffer to send to that destination. So the instruction which follows the call to the send function is not executed. That is, it traps to the kernel and the process is blocked until the message has been completely sent. That means that the client is blocked till then. Or we can say that the sending process is suspended. The instruction following the call to send is only executed after the message has been sent continuously. Only then the client will resume its execution. Similarly, with receive function, a call to receive does not return control until a message has actually been received and it has been put in the message buffer pointed to by the parameter. This process will remain suspended or in the block state until a message from the sender arrives. Moving towards non-blocking send primitive. If send is non-blocking, it returns control to the caller immediately before the message is sent. So now the advantage of this scheme is that the sending process can continue computing in parallel with the message transmission instead of having the CPU go idle. So a disadvantage of this system is that the sender cannot modify the message buffer until the message has been sent. So what is the solution to this? The solution to this is the kernel will copy the message to an internal kernel buffer and then allow the process to continue. As soon as it gets the control back, it is free to rescue the buffer. So in this case, what happens is the data is copied to the message buffer, and from the message buffer it is copied to an internal kernel buffer. Till then the client is blocked for some time, after which the message is being sent. So the disadvantage of the system is every outgoing message has to be copied from the user space to the kernel space. With so many network interfaces, the message will have to be copied to a hardware transmission buffer. So basically now there are two copies of the message. So in this case, the first copy is obviously wasted, and the extra copy can reduce the performance of the system considerably. An alternative solution to this is we make use of an interrupt. So it will interrupt the sender when the message has been sent to inform it that the buffer is once again available. So with the help of this message that the message buffer is available, no copy is required, which will also save time as compared to the previous method. In the previous method, there were two copies of the message. One was in the message buffer and one was in the kernel space. So we eliminate the process of copying the message from the user space to the kernel space, thereby saving time. Now the disadvantage of the system is user level interrupts make programming quite tricky and also difficult. So programs which are based on interrupts are difficult to write correctly, and it is almost impossible to debug when they go wrong. So to summarize the blocking and the non-blocking primitives, we spoke about blocking send primitive, non-blocking send with copy, and non-blocking send with interrupt. So the problem with blocking send was the CPU will remain idle till the message is being transmitted. That means the client is suspended or blocked till the message is being transmitted. With respect to the next method, that is non-blocking send with copy, a lot of CPU time is wasted to make an additional copy of the message. And the problem with non-blocking send with interrupt is it becomes quite difficult to program, which includes interrupts. Moving towards buffered and unbuffered primitives. The primitives we have described so far are essentially unbuffered primitives. We refer to the server code which we have seen in our previous sessions. We refer to the receive function in the server code. Now what this receive function means is the address refers to a specific process. So a call, that is receive address and the value M1, tells the kernel of the machine on which it is running that the calling process is listening to an address file server and is prepared to receive one message sent to this address. A single buffer or a message buffer pointed by M1 is provided to hold the incoming message. Now when the message comes in, the receiving kernel copies it to the buffer and unblocks the receiving process. The use of an address to refer to a specific process is illustrated in this figure. We move towards unbuffered message passing and the problem associated with unbuffered message passing primitives. Now, if two or more clients are using the server, so in this case, two clients are referring to this particular server trying to access the same process. So after the server has accepted a message from one of them, so in this case we assume that it has accepted message from client 1. Then in this case it is no longer listening to its address until it has finished its work and gone back to the top of the loop to call receive again. Now in this case, if client 1 takes a while to do the work on the server, the other client, that is in this case client 2, may make multiple attempts to send to it and may eventually give up, depending on the values of their retransmission timers and how much impatient client 2 is. Moving towards buffered message passing. In the buffered technique, a new data structure called as mailbox is used to handle all the incoming messages. A process that is interested in receiving message tells the kernel to create a mailbox for it and specifies an address to look for in network packets. So henceforth, all the incoming message with that address are put into the mailbox. The call to receive just removes one message from the mailbox, and in this way the kernel knows what to do with the incoming message and has a place to put them. So this technique is basically called as the buffered primitive or buffered message passing. The disadvantage of buffered message passing is the mailbox or the size of the mailbox is finite and at times it can fill up. So now when a message arrives for a mailbox that is full, the kernel once again has to decide to either keep that message for a while, hoping that at least one message will be extracted from the mailbox or discard it. Now, what is the solution to this mailbox since the size of the mailbox is limited? So what we can do is, we do not let a process send a message if there is no room to store at the destination. So in this case, the sender will block until an acknowledgement comes back saying that the message has been received. So if the mailbox is full, the sender can be backed up and suspended. So finally, when space becomes available in the mailbox, the sender is allowed to once again make an attempt.